Yesterday, Defense Minister Israel Katz approved an Israeli Defense Forces assault plan on Gaza City, and now the IDF is gearing up for the next stage, Operation Gideon's Chariots 2. Though plans were finalized, they remain adaptable and subject to change. The operation will deploy 5 divisions, 12 brigade battle groups, and 2 Gaza regional brigades, incorporating reserve and conscripted forces across engineering, air, sea, and special units. Now, Hamas's military chain of command has been holed up in Gaza City, with extensive infrastructure having been destroyed. Conditions are aimed at pushing Hamas towards a diplomatic resolution and hostage release deal. Yeah, this is a good development, but it's just more war. And I know the people of Israel want peace since we were just there. And to talk about that, joining me now to discuss is national correspondent for the Daily Signal, Tony Kinnett, and co host of the Cut the Bull podcast, Charles Love. Charles and Tony, welcome.
It's great to be back with you.
You
Thanks for
know,
having me.
I'm glad you're here because if we're not rolling in helicopters or hanging out with Bibi Netanyahu, I guess we'll just do this, right?
It's a little better than artillery fire right next to where you're standing, but we all can't have everything.
Charles, we did actually hear artillery fire while we were in the park where they had it was the festival. It was a
Right.
very sad moment. The woman who was giving us the tour, every time the bombs would go off, she was clearly suffering from PTSD. She was
Right.
having trouble getting through her presentation. And that's, I think, what characterized our trip. It was the soaring heights of things we'd never done before, walking in history. And
Right.
then, Charles, it was the devastation, the sorrow. I mean, I sat next to you, Charles, in the Golan Heights, and we were
Uh,
crying over the families, their loss of their children, their brothers and sisters. It was a tough trip.
yeah, I think it was a trip of a lifetime for me. It was because it was part vacation, part religious experience, part history lesson. It was just everything rolled into one. And of course, our treatment, which, we could spend hours talking about that. But, it's a lot of things that people don't understand, they don't get to see. Obviously, it's a complicated situation that's happening there. Here in America, we only hear one side. And you talked about the courageous woman speaking at the Nova Festival site. We're in America. I know we as conservatives don't tend to play that card, but we're in America. It was a black woman who was a survivor of that terrorist attack, talking about her experience in surviving there. So that was moving as well. Just everything about it was like unforgettable.
Yeah. Black, Jewish, and courageous.
Right.
I don't think her being black was a real issue other than when she explained to us and said that even though her family's been there, she's not a recent immigrant. She said she's Jewish. And for her, the big issue is being Jewish or not being Jewish. That's how things are divided there in Israel. You're Muslim, you're Armenian Christian, you're Jewish, you're Christian, plain old Christian.
Right.
Those are the delineating factors. It's less about race. And Tony, I have to tell you, one of the things that we found interesting when I was talking to you on the bus, especially, was your assessment of some of the facilities that we saw that were affiliated with the military. Because you're a West Point grad, you have a very, very fascinating military background. And we were sitting up and talking about that like two old military heads, although we are not old. And well, yeah, we talk a lot, but we're not old.
Well, yeah. Thanks for the clarification there. Just a cadet, not a West Point grad. Although I will say that very early on at the academy, and really in any National Guard institution in the United States, there's a set of standards. Again, whether it's reserves, National Guard, IRR, whatever, you know very well, that you're expected to keep because standards are very important. And Israel, that is currently in the midst of fighting a war in which all hands are on deck. Of course, 60,000 reserves just called up with the operation into Gaza City. We see the level of discipline, which is probably a little bit rare in kind of the conscript services of the Israeli forces compared to the UN, which is just a disaster. Whether we're talking about the UN Lebanese action group or the UN Syria observation detachment, super duper force, or whatever names they're giving themselves these days. And it was embarrassing. I saw a man with two left boots on. That's not a joke. A man that had two boots that were pointing left. Either it's a very interesting medical condition or, my goodness, it's a little bit rough. I mean, jewelry, and we're talking like the dangly earrings out. You're not supposed to have those in active combat zones. Hair half down. It was embarrassing. And no wonder the UN can't keep anything set for 5 minutes. It's just petulantly hilarious to watch in person right up close.
So, for those who don't know, when you're on active duty, you have to be dress right dress. That is Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, Reserve. Dress right dress means you are, according to the UCMJ, it's actually your code of dress. You have to be uptight. So no dangly earrings. Hair has to be pulled up tight and off the neck. For women, I mean, there's a lot of standards now. The entirety of Israel was full of insanely hot people, extraordinarily good looking people, but they allow that to impact how they behave in the military. And Tony was having none of it. And instead of chiming in, he had so succinctly encapsulated, because I saw the violations too, and I thought, fascinating. Multiple gold chains in uniform, hair, swooped to like this hair in the military. When I was on active duty, I had short hair. I intentionally kept my hair bobbed off so I didn't have to worry about putting it up. I mean, I saw the violations, but they also don't have the facilities that we have. All of our facilities are hardened. We have roads. Everything that we do militarily is expensive in comparison to what we see in other countries. And I just think we're used to a higher standard. And Israel is a rich
That's the key
country,
term.
but right, the comparison for Israel is, it's like comparing one rich county to another rich county, but those counties are both outside of the top 20 counties in America. Where when we think rich country, we're like, number one is United States, number two, is China or Russia, number three, like that. It's a different kind of rich nation, if
I,
you will.
I think, and I'll keep this really short, it's more they're used to being at war. They're used to fighting a seven front war. And that's why for the Israelis, I'm not as particularly harsh. Although I think, obviously the reason you don't wear dangly earrings, other than they just clash with my eyes in uniform, is
Mhm.
because when you're in the middle of an active situation, you don't have time to be messing with something that gets caught. By the way, it's the same in a manufacturing facility. You don't wear loose sleeves. You don't wear your hair down. That's not something that's exclusive to the military. And I understand that when you've been at war for so long, it's easy to get complacent, but complacency is what kills. And unfortunately, the biggest thing that I've seen that is endemic to the Israeli society is how many times they get complacent. Really, I mean, every time we would talk to those in the kibbutz right next to Gaza, they would say, "Well, but we're really looking forward to getting back to this point of peace and having people come in and work." And it was a little shocking to hear people who had been through that brutal terror already starting to sink back into complacency. It scared me, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I was shocked by it too. And Charles, you and I discussed this on the bus. We were coming back from there, and I was floored by them saying that they expect the IDF to protect them. And I want to get your thoughts on, we learned that in Israel, you're only allowed to own one pistol. It can't be semi-automatic, one per person, one per citizen. Charles, what did you make of it? Because we toured all the different kinds of kibbutzim. We didn't just go to one. So now we understand more, the South versus the North, the ideas that those people hold. What did you make of the Second Amendment rights there for what they were?
Yeah, the gun thing was odd. I kind of
Mm.
looked at it like the laws could be changed a bit. You think they'd be more fluid, a little looser based on what they're dealing with. But I didn't really blame the laws because most of the people complaining didn't really say, well, we're not allowed. If you recall, they said, well, we don't have guns together these laws. There's so many things you got to jump through. And we were like what? Like you got to have an ID. I'm like, okay. Like you have to do a background check.
Background
All
check.
these other
Mhm.
things. The same things we have to do. So I think the issue is them not pushing. There's something about them that makes them not push for the rights. No one's asking why we can't do this, that, or the other. And that was a little bit more surprising to me. But really quickly to what Tony said, though, I think the conscription might be part of it. The fact that everybody serves makes it a
Mhm.
little bit
Dead
different.
on.
So we're serving anyway. So, we're not as serious, about it. And then quickly, Stacy and I talked
Well,
to someone who
we're out
had
of
this.
time. We're
Oh,
out of
wow.
time. Yeah, that's how quick these segments are, which means I just have to come on y'all's podcast so we can finish this conversation.
There you go.
Tony Kinnett, Charles Love, I loved traveling with you guys. We're now travel buddies. Thank you for coming on.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, you can follow them at C Douglas Love 3. That's Charles, or at the Tonus. We'll be right back with more. We'll be talking about the Mission to Israel Day 3.